okay, who was the top-ranked linebacker in Dade County, actually the top defensive player to sign today from Dade County. Those who have watched him play know he's an instant difference maker for us. Long, rangy, explosive, physical, instinctive, knockback tackler, extremely effective in the pass game as well. He's coached by Roland Smith, so you know he's going to be ready to play, right? That mentality, that hard-nosed approach to football and discipline carries a lot of value. In the top 300 ESPN, top 240, 247 player as well, playing for his third state title. A lot to be said about a guy who's a captain of a team playing for a third title. And I can't say enough about him, getting a chance to meet his family, his coaches, great support system. He really embodies what Dade County football is all about. So arriving in a situation like this where you need depth at that position, you need guys to come in and make an impact right away. We see him as an impact player that could certainly make a difference right away, and we're going to make sure that we get him ready to do so, okay? Rolling right along with the quarterback, Jacurri Brown. A lot of really interesting stats for you guys on Jacurri. He's nearly 10,000 yards in his career, okay? 10,000 yards, 5,000 passing, 5,000 rushing, 100 touchdowns, over 100 touchdowns actually. Okay, a guy that not only the Region 7A, 1-7A Player of the Year in Valdosta, but it's for nearly every single year he was there, he took the team all the way to the semifinals. Okay, so here's a guy that knows how to win. He is loved by everybody in the school. It's the first thing that pops is not only his stature, his accomplishments, but his demeanor. He's got the presence of what you want from your quarterback. A guy that people naturally gravitate to. Hard-nosed football player, accurate, great pocket presence, can do it with his feet, can do it with his arm, natural throwing the ball. Again, very, very accurate. You always look at completion percentages. You eliminate the bubble passes, you eliminate the screen passes. What is he like throwing the ball down the field? He does that, and he's been a 4-year starter over there at a program. If you ever have a chance to watch great football and want to watch great football, stop by Lowndes High School. They do a great job. But again, a guy that we're thrilled to death that could look at competition right in the eye. He knows we have a competitive quarterback room, and he's running right to it. And for that, we thank him. We're honored to have him in our program. Okay, Chris Graves out of Fort Myers, Bishop Moreau, 6'2", 175 pounds. This is a guy that, he's coming in as a corner, but he impacts the game in all three phases. He's long, instinctive, great ball skills, physical, natural tackler, natural with the ball in his hands, affects the game on special teams as well. Another top 247 player, another ESPN top 300 guy, a guy that we also feel can come on in and immediately have an impact on our program in so many different ways, okay? But again, another hungry, driven young man that wants to be a part of this family. Had a chance to meet him this weekend as well as Jacurri, as well as Wesley. Wesley I met right when I got off the plane, before I saw any family members pretty much. So, but all in all, again, Chris Graves, a great football player for us. Jayden Harris was a guy that surprised a lot of people today when he committed to us. Another player from Georgia, one of the better players in the city of Atlanta. Atlanta has great football. A soccer player to begin with, a guy that made the transition over and just very natural. When you play soccer and you have to use your feet the way they do and you make that transition, at first it's difficult. He was very natural with it. Huge upside with him. Another big guy, long guy, 6 foot, 180 pounds. Two-way player as well. First team All-Region by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And really looking forward to getting him on campus to join his brothers over here. All right, jumping over to the offense, Isaiah Horton, okay, from Murfreesboro, Tennessee, Oakland High School, 6 foot. He's listed at 6'3", 190. When you see him in person, he looks a whole lot bigger than that. I was shocked at how big he was. Big physical receiver, stretch the field guy, can also get in and out of his breaks to run all the intermediate stuff, the short stuff. Very physical blocker on the perimeter. You know how necessary that is nowadays with a perimeter game, both in the run and the pass game. Another ESPN 300 guy, top 247 guy. He transferred to Oakland in 2020 and helped them to their first ever 15-0 season. I think things like that have to stand out, right? Guys that are natural at leading and changing things. But we talked about how much he can stretch the field, how physical he is. Just a guy that plays the game hard. 70 catches, 1,300 yards, 17 touchdowns in his 2 seasons over at Oakland. Really excited to get him over here. Okay. Just a little while ago, you guys know to win football games, you got to stop the run, you got to affect the passer. And we got just that in Nigel Lee Kelly from Dillard High School, 6'4", 240 plus pounds. One of the top players in the country, a guy that he does it all. Incredible first step, knocks back tackles, tight ends, sets edges really well, really affects the passer. I think he had 25 sacks in his last couple seasons over at Dillard. He's a top-ranked lineman assigned today, as guys continue to work their way through their processes. But a guy just like Wesley and just like these other guys, they had every offer in the country just about, okay? Important for guys like this to stay here close to home, right? And join us to continue to rebuild and build up our roster, our program, and to elevate the standard for what we do. But, we hope to complement him with another, great piece on the edge. It's so important as you continue to build the defense. You got to set edges. You got to affect the passer, especially in the fourth quarter when games are on the line. But besides the 25 sacks, first-team All-Broward guy, first-team All-State guy, top 247 guy, all the accolades. And I think as you go down this list, just about all those guys have those accolades. And those are resources that we have plenty of respect for, even though we do our own evaluation. So All-American Bowl guy as well. These guys will be playing into the postseason, which we encourage. Anytime they can play or compete in another sport, we do so. Okay. And then going out of state, going over to Mississippi for Kamari Rogers. At one point, the #1 player in the state. He did have an injury. Okay, this past season, I believe right before he might have had a pick 6 right before he did get injured. But he's an Under Armour game selection. And probably won't be able to play in that, but a consensus top 10 corner, top 100 player, one of the better players in the country. Really, really fast, explosive, change of direction to an elite level. Coached really, really hard, discipline, great energy about him. He's got great range, willing tackler, opens up his hips, great man-to-man ability. You always look for that. Really hard to find nowadays. If you want to be successful on defense, you want to be able to play man-to-man. But he was poised for a really big year before hurting his ACL. Track athlete as well, offered by just about everybody in the country. Another guy. All these guys were fired up to get here, but that's a little bit on Kamari Rogers. And then rounding off the class, another guy that played for a former Hurricane over there at Orlando Evans, playing for old number 96, Kennard Lang. All right, and coming in is Markeith Williams. Safety for us, 6'1", probably a little bit more, 170, 175 pounds. Another top 300 guy, another guy that was a top-ranked player in the Orlando area that signed today as they continue to work their way through their processes. 4-year starter, the number 3 overall player in the Orlando area, and it all started when he was a freshman. 6 interceptions right away to start things off. They found out early he was a real deal guy. We talked about Kennard Lang. He's coached by Kennard, coached by Roland Smith. They're going to be ready to play. Those guys coach football the way it's supposed to be coached. And he's another guy. Most of these guys had just about everybody in the country, the who's who of college football. So that's a little bit of a summary of the guys in the class, and open to questions that you may have.
If you've got a question for Coach Cristobal, please raise your hand and we'll get a mic. We'll run the mics on both sides. Start here with Mike Cuneo.
Yes, sir.
Hey, 8 guys in the class. I know you guys are just getting started. What would you like to see that number get to by the second signing period to be considered a successful class?
Well, I think it's important I wouldn't put a cap on the number. You always want to hit anywhere between 16 and 25, to be honest with you, depending on what your needs are. Important when you get in to make sure that the ones you bring in are the ones you feel really good about. And because it's tempting, right? It's tempting to spit some offers out there and maybe grab at some guys that you see on film that have athletic ability and feel like they have a chance, but you hesitate a little bit when you don't know everything about the person, the character, the competitor, and everything else that goes with that. So We went quality over quantity to start off, but just to be clear, this is ongoing. I think we'll end up between the use of the portal, some other guys that are still out there that are unsigned, I think we'll land anywhere between 16 and 20 guys signing and being part of this class, whether they be transfers or freshmen that are signing. So, but we don't put a cap on it. Whatever the max number is, that's always going to be the goal, right? Whether you do it immediately, whether you hold some for the spring and the summer, this whole, the advent of the transfer portal allows you to build your roster in different ways. Sometimes it's, God forbid, there's an injury during the winter conditioning program or in the spring and you have to fill needs. It's always good to have that flexibility. NCAA rules are forever just evolving and revolving, right? There's now a +7, little caveat in there that you can use if you have 7 that do leave your program. So taking all that into account, but full throttle and finding the very best.
Hey, Mario. Good to see you. Matt over at Kane Sport and Rivals. Okay, a two-parter for you, which I used to ask you back in the day, I think. The first one is, just
How
talk
come
about...
everybody has gray hair now that used to have dark hair,
Thanks for the compliment.
Okay,
I
man.
appreciate that. First part is just the biggest challenge of getting this done in that 10-day window. And then the second part is you have a roster. You mentioned you want to take the 16 to 20, great. But you have a roster that's almost like 80% freshmen and sophomores next year. So, what's the challenge in that? And when do you balance it and try to sort of get older guys to sort of, balance the classes? How hard is that going to be?
Absolutely. No, it's a great question. Is how hard is it coming in? Oh, well, when you're on, when you're on the other side of the earth, right? And the majority of your recruiting efforts took place on that side. That's where there's some challenge to it. But there was some overlap. Nigel Lee was a guy that we had over there a bunch of times. And we're very familiar and felt very strongly about him and knew his family really well. And then a lot of credit to the guys that have been here working on staff that established some good relationships and were able to help myself in the transition, That's huge. In terms of roster staggering, I think you make a point that is very undervalued and underestimated. There has to be a stagger, right? Because there has to be hope, there has to be a strategy for how you stack your roster, right? If you're overlogged with guys in the same class at the same position, well, it's probably going to be an empty nest, next time you come around for the season or for the spring. So it has to make sense, right? And to make it make sense, the caliber of player has to be one that is able to compete, truly has a chance to earn playing time, and there also has to be separation. Okay, you have to, in other words, project 2 to 3 years out. We don't project 4 years out, but that there's a reason, like the old coach used to say, that those things are magnets, right? The names, because you got to be able to move them around, right? And sometimes move one out and another one in. So that's a challenge. Late in the evenings or early morning, whatever type, clock is a clock. I couldn't tell you where it starts and ends during these last 10 days, but a big thing that I've been spending time on is roster assessment. What caliber player do we have at each position, and how do we address those needs? And then from a transfer portal standpoint, which ones are we familiar with? Which ones have we evaluated to be guys that are recruitable? And then does their background check provide us enough information where we trust going on a player of that caliber? So all in all, it's I guess we're describing a process that needs to gobble up every second of your existence to make it feel right and staggered the right way, so that your roster does have depth, but that it's not log jammed, right? I hope that answers your question. Yes, sir.
We got a chance to speak to Wesley this morning, and he told me that the thing that impressed him that you said to him was about changing the culture. When you said that to him, and also someone like Kelly, you want to keep the hometown kids here. Was it something that you had to stress to them, or was it something that they believed right away?
Well, I think changing the culture relates to different things, because I haven't been here long enough to address exactly what as it relates to our football program, because there's a lot of awesome young men that I've met on this football team, and together we're going to talk and work and implement culture, the highest cultural standards. In terms of, in talking to Wesley and recruiting, the culture of how we recruit South Florida is, yeah, it's got to be drastically different. It has to be. I mean, I remember being a graduate assistant here in 1997. I remember the caliber of player, you know, and I had played at Dade County. I mean, I played, and you always felt, man, this is really good football. But until you go away, right, you don't realize that Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach has a special brand of football. And as it relates to culture, this has to be the most appealing place to our local players. And it has to be the most appealing place not only because it's close by, right, because the world's a lot smaller nowadays, right? There's jets, helicopters, you name it. But it has to be more appealing because of the way we do things, the way we play the game, the way our strength and conditioning program develops our players, the way our life after football program sets them up for life way after they got to hang them up, right? The way they can be involved in the community and affect all those little people out there that are one day going to be filling their shoes here at the University of Miami or in the city. So I think that's really important to Wesley. You know, Wesley's a special guy, special mom, special family. You watch him at practice, you watch the way he leads that team, you watch the way he's around his sister and his mom. I mean, you're talking about an elite human being, you know? And I know that's important to him. So the culture of South Florida, of Miami, he embodies that. And we have to change things so that guys like that feel like this is the priority place to be to continue their career.
Hey, Mario. You talked about how tough it can be. You came from Oregon. How exhilarating have these 9 or 10 days been? Anything that you learn when your recruiting window is that narrow? And also, I know last year's signing class, they were a very close-knit bunch, and it might be too soon for you to know this, but have you gotten a sense how these guys connect with one another, and how important is that?
Oh, it's critically important. I think, you know what you relearn all the time, Susan? You relearn the importance of relationships, right? I mean, I've been very blessed now. I've worked in some places where we had to borrow the intramural lockers for a locker room, you know, and I've been at places where, you know, it looks like Star Trek, the Enterprise, from a resources and facility standpoint. But all that being said, one extreme to the other, the people and the relationships, and whether they're genuine or not. You know, this whole thing, the way that they sweat it out, bleed it out, things that they go through, the effort they got to put in this thing. I mean, what they do, what these student athletes do is hard, and it should be hard. Thank God it's hard, right? It's the ultimate lesson. But because it is, to make this thing come together, and the reason why it seems like last year's class was really together and this one's really together is because of time invested in each other, with each other. And that brings legitimate respect. And with respect, people galvanize, right? Units galvanize. So I think they are relatively tight. I think it's probably a reason why, you know, those guys, you know, the core of the class stuck together. And I think it's going to help galvanize the rest of the class. You know, these guys are very, besides energetic, they're very charismatic. These guys are fun to be around. You know, they really are. I mean, and great families as well. So all in all, just very impressed with these young men and their families.
The tight space that you had to recruit, can you learn anything from that? You know, is there anything you can gain by that?
Well, I learned you really don't have to sleep till day 8, right? I learned that, you know, Bustelo versus Pilon is, you know, pretty evenly matched. Those coffees work really well. It works better when you throw it in your eyes after a couple days. I learned about relationships for real because, you know, now I realize I am 51. I'm not 27 anymore. And I realize that those 24 years spent, you know, working and dealing with a lot of different coaches at different places, those relationships really come into play. You know, relationships with former teammates, right? Staying in touch with people, valuing people, right? Making sure that they know and they understand that you value them and their friendship and their, you know, just all the things that, you know, you may have gone through in the past with them.
Hey, Mario. Wanted to ask you about Nigel Lee Kelly, just the relationship with him. He really made it seem like if you're not here, he's not coming here. He's probably going to where you were at before. Just curious about when you started recruiting him. And then also if you could speak maybe in a bigger sort of picture of, forging those relationships with kids and how you go about it and maybe who you learned from on how to do it. You've obviously been around great coaches.
Right.
And you build those special relationships. What's sort of your magic trick, if you could share it?
Oh, well, Nigel Lee, again, we have been recruiting him for a long, long time. He had visited us at Oregon at least 3 times, if I'm not mistaken. So we invest a lot in him, and in his mom and his family. So he was very familiar with us up there. He had seen he's seen 3 of the 4 seasons. So, and I think when you spend that amount of time with a guy, just naturally you form that type of a relationship like we do with everybody. I really don't think there's a secret or a magic trick. Honestly, we don't try to head fake anybody. That's not it. The passion that you have for the sport and the ability to present people with a better pathway to life should make you very passionate. I think if this is truly a vocation for you, it'll show in how you approach people and how you sell your program. And I think that's what helps us. And I've been lucky to be around and have been surrounded by some awesome staff members because you really recruit as a staff. This whole thing about independent contractors recruiting, I don't buy that. I don't. At the end of the day, a set of parents or a parent or a guardian is dropping off their most prized possession to you, and they're trusting you for development, right? For guidance, for accountability, all that stuff. So it's as simple as this. How would you do it with your very own son? How would you do it as it relates to everything? Because if you do it that way, you probably aren't going to be perfect, but I bet you every intention is. Okay? And then, when you add for us here, I mean, that thing right there, brother, it's different. It's different. It'll always be that way. It's still settling in, that I'm actually here. So it's awesome. We're surrounded by awesome people. What this university, this city, this tradition has to sell. And with this just renewed enthusiasm and momentum and level of investment, it's generating a lot of powerful momentum and one that we have to ride into this second signing period and then right straight into the 2023 class. We got to really dive into the trenches now. We've got to be about the trenches in the line of scrimmage. So we've got some work to do there in terms of recruiting. Certainly, we still got to do some work. Again, complement the edges. They're still got to get at least one more really, really good, excellent elite edge player, I should say. At linebacker, what a blessing with Wesley. Getting here, all these other guys at DB that signed with us today. Front 7, man. Front 7. That needs to look a certain way out there. Come spring ball, come the fall, it's got to look a certain way. And I'm talking about body types, I'm talking about depth, explosiveness, physicality. So I have no idea why I got off on a tangent talking about the trenches. But I'm excited about the trenches, okay? Because as I was walking in, I just saw one of the largest human beings I've ever seen on tape. And was looking forward to getting him on the phone. So, but that being said, just again, the really, really just full head of steam, man, in everything.
Hey, Coach, you kind of just answered the question I was going to ask, but just with the remaining numbers you do have to allocate, you're focusing mainly, fair to say, O-line, D-line, and with the dust settling and a lot of guys signed today, do you feel like there's still enough quality out there for you to go chase?
I do. I think there's enough quality. I don't think you ever try to invent a player just to sign a number because, again, look at this. There's 2,000 players in the transfer portal. How many fit your program? I don't know. It might be 100. It might be 0. There still are some targets out there that haven't signed that we're currently engaged in communication and to see where that takes us and where that leads us. But I mean, we really need a couple of skill positions. At the wide receiver position, we want some playmakers, guys that can stretch the field, guys that can make you miss. Guys are really hard to tackle, right? Guys that can take a 3-yard, 4-yard hitch and split you for 60. Big guys that can knock you back, control line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, long and rangy at tackle. powerful, strong on the interior, both the offense and defensive side. Need guys that'll eat up those A's and B's, right? The gaps, knock them back, let these linebackers run free and make plays. Guys that can cover, guys that can play man-to-man coverage, and at the same time, it's college football. These corners, they got to play like safeties when they're to the boundary. They have to, because that's where typically teams attack us in the running game. So that's about the extent of the positions we're looking at. But as mentioned earlier, with 8 on board and some other ones that we're pursuing and we feel pretty strongly about, I expect the class to end up between 16 and 20, but it wouldn't be completely out of this thought process to end up with some more.
Thank you very much.
Mark, can you say one in Spanish, like,
I could say a lot of things in Spanish. I don't know if I could talk recruiting in Spanish. Estamos muy impresionados con los jugadores que pudimos firmar hoy. Son unos jóvenes excelentes, estudiosos y tremendos atletas, y esperamos que van a ser una tremenda adición a nuestro equipo para ayudarnos a ganar campeonatos. Damn, I didn't know I could do that. I'm good. You could shoot away, man. We got a little time now. Now after this, watch out.
Mario, Tom D'Angelo from the Palm Beach Post.
Yes, sir.
You touched on it. Talk about the challenges of the puzzle now with the putting a roster together because of the portal and not going, not just grabbing kids when you're recruiting high school kids right away, because you have to kind of fit people in now. And what will that be like for you between now and early February signing period?
Yeah, this puzzle is ever changing. That's the part that's really difficult now. It's really going to be, I don't think until 4 or 5 years go by where we'll truly be able to assess the impact and the effects of the portal, because remember, the portal works both ways, in and out, right? What are you going to look like? What's your current roster going to look like at the end of a certain time frame, after winter conditioning drills, after the fourth quarter program, right? Because that's really challenging as well. After after cultural standards are in place, what's that going to look like? So it just doesn't stop. It really doesn't. You have to assess your roster every day when you walk in the building and when you walk out, because it could change that quickly. And it might be one guy, but you know what? One guy's important. We've all seen that. We've all seen so many games come down to one play, and sometimes if you have the right guy in there and you've coached them the right way, you find a way to win, and sometimes if you don't, it won't. So there's a lot of moving parts. You just want to be deep enough where should you sustain some losses in terms of personnel from an injury standpoint, that you could put a player in there that is capable of helping you win a championship, at the conference level and beyond. That's the goal, okay? What number can you get to on that? That's fluid. What do you have to do? You have to cross-train. You have to cross-train. And we think that, if you look at everybody's roster nowadays, even though you have 85 scholarships, right, with all the transition taking place, what really is that number, right? So be ready to cross-train your corners and nickels, cross-train your guards and tackles and your centers. Running backs probably have to cross-train sometimes to a certain extent, not too much, but they'll have to get some slot work, and receivers, they all can replace each other at different spots. So versatility is at a premium in modern-day college football, in my opinion.
You mentioned the portal a couple times. Are you guys expecting any transfers from here on out? I know you finally got a chance to spend time with the players.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I don't have any to report or expect at the moment. I just think nowadays you'd be crazy not to at least expect something. But so far, everything's been really, really positive. I think there's a lot of enthusiasm because, we're just being really genuine and honest about the approach, what we're going to do, and we're spending time with our people, the most important recruits. These are awesome. These are now part of the family that's downstairs in that locker room, which, it's always going to be the most important.
Hey Mario, one easy one and one trickier one. Do you know how many of these guys are expecting early to get here next month? And then the trickier
one more time,
one,
I'm sorry. I didn't hear the first part.
How many of these guys are expecting to enroll early? And then obviously a lot of talk about the NIL today. Just how did you find the first recruiting cycle went with the name, image, and likeness rules changed?
Yeah, well, at least we expect at least half of these guys and possibly more that we're targeting because we do have an official visit opportunity even before school starts or just after school starts where we could still get guys enrolled in the classes. So the number could be anywhere from 4 to 10 for mid-year spots. NIL is a game changer. It is, and will continue to change the game. You've seen, man, where do you start with this, right? You've seen different NIL opportunities constructed in different ways, and you know what? I'm all good with it. It's just you want to continue to have a great feel for the pulse of which way it's going, and you'd like to stay ahead of the curve with it in terms of understanding it. Remember, you can't actually construct anything or have any hands-on dealings with it, but the people that can and the people that are in that industry, you know, and the different companies that have been set up for different universities around the country, certainly have to keep up with things because they will continue to shift, right, the focus of recruits and their families because of the capabilities it will provide.
Anything else for Coach Cristobal?
All right, guys. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you. You guys have a good day. Drive safely.